A major new development in the search for Nancy Guthrie. The 84-year-old mother of Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie went missing early February 1st and has been the subject of an intense search ever since.
Over the past few days, I've been examining records, interviews, and first-hand accounts to piece together a story that had been hidden in plain sight for decades. Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old matriarch from Tucson, Arizona, as investigators search for Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy. Today, authorities providing the most information yet, including new details about that purported ransom note received by multiple news outlets, disappeared from her home in a way that has left family, friends, and authorities searching for answers. On the surface, she was the perfect mother and grandmother, steady, devoted, and selfless. Everyone who knew her believed they understood who she was. But that understanding was only part of the truth. Nancy had built a life that seemed ordinary, but as it turns out was far more complex. She had raised music, 3 children on her own after her husband Charles died suddenly in 1989. She managed her household, worked part-time as a bookkeeper, volunteered at her church, and supported her children through their education and early careers. To her family, she was the steady presence they relied on. Everything changed when a mysterious package arrived at her daughter Savannah's New York apartment. Inside was a faded photograph of Nancy, standing beside a man none of her family recognized, taken in 1992 in Santa Fe. On the back, someone had written a single line, "Ask about Elena." That small photograph revealed that Nancy Guthrie had been living a life no one in her family knew about, a parallel existence that for more than 3 decades she had kept hidden. The disappearance, coupled with this photograph, opened questions that had never been asked before. Who was Elena? And why had Nancy kept this part of her life a secret for so long? Nancy Guthrie's life in Tucson appeared, at first glance, to be simple and straightforward. After her husband, Charles, died suddenly in 1989, she was left a widow at the age of 47 with 3 children, Savannah, Annie, and Cam. Friends and neighbors describe her as resilient and unwavering, the kind of person who made sure that life continued, no matter how difficult. She took on the role of both mother and father, balancing work, household responsibilities, and the emotional needs of her family. Her part-time work as a bookkeeper gave her independence, but it was clear that her priorities always came first: her children. She volunteered at her church, attended every school event, and made her home a place of stability. In a city known for its desert heat and sprawling suburbs, NY's ranch-style home became a symbol of constancy, a place where the family could rely on her presence and guidance. To her children, she was more than just a caretaker. Savannah, her eldest, often credits Nancy with her early confidence and drive. Annie and Cam recall weekend routines, quiet family dinners, and long conversations that shaped their sense of responsibility and morality. Nancy was patient and music attentive, the kind of mother who noticed small changes in mood or behavior, who remembered what her children needed before they even said it. Neighbors remember her walking through the streets of Tucson with a quiet purpose. She greeted everyone by name, remembered birthdays, and was always ready to lend a hand. Even in casual social settings, she carried herself with the same composed, calm demeanor she displayed at home. It was easy for anyone to believe that Nancy Guthrie's life was one of unbroken stability. Yet even the most consistent lives have complexities beneath the surface. While NY's children were growing, she maintained routines that projected order and devotion. She managed finances carefully, attended church regularly, and cultivated friendships that reinforced her image as a reliable, trustworthy music figure. To the outside world, she was the ultimate mother figure, a constant in a world of change. Despite the appearance of normally small inconsistencies were scattered throughout her past. Long trips she described as retreats, brief absences, for reasons that didn't always align with her schedule, and moments of private reflection sometimes seemed unusual, though nothing overtly alarming. At the time, these details were easy to overlook, dismissed as part of the complexities of raising a family alone. NY's life was admired and respected, and her children thrived under her care. Savannah landed her first television job. Annie pursued higher education, and Cam found his path in his own way. To all who knew her, Nancy Guthrie was a figure of stability, strength, and reliability. Her home, her routines, and her devotion to family created a sense of certainty, a life that seemed entirely understandable and complete. And yet the first signs of a hidden life were already there, embedded in small, seemingly insignificant moments that would only gain meaning years later. These cracks in her otherwise flawless life were subtle, invisible to most, but they would become critical once the events of 2026 brought her disappearance and the photograph from Santa Fe into the public eye. NY's Tucson life, as everyone believed it, was only one side of a story that had been quietly unfolding for decades. A life of devotion and love that would soon collide with a secret kept carefully, methodically, and for a reason she believed was justified. The first real indication that Nancy Guthrie's life might not be as straightforward as everyone believed came 5 days after her disappearance. On February 6, 2026, music. An unmarked envelope arrived at Savannah's apartment in New York. Inside was a faded photograph of a much younger Nancy standing beside a man the family did not recognize outside a small cafe in Santa Fe. On the back of the photo, written in handwriting unfamiliar to any of the Guthrie, were music, just 3 words: ask about Elena. The photograph stunned Savannah, Annie, and Cam. None of them knew the man, and none of them recognized the reference to Elena. What made it more confusing was the date: 1992, 3 years after their father's death. It suggested that Nancy had been living a life they had never known during a period that should have been devoted entirely to raising them and coping with her loss. That evening, the siblings connected via a video call. The image of their mother standing with a stranger in a distant city left them speechless. Questions poured in. Who was the man? Why Santa Fe? And most importantly, who was Elena? At the same time, investigators began examining the envelope. The postmark traced it back to Santa Fe immediately, establishing a connection to a city none of the children had ever associated with their mother. Suddenly, the investigation shifted from a disappearance in Tucson to something more complicated: a possible hidden life in another state, existing in parallel to the one everyone had known. The arrival of that single photograph changed everything. It suggested that Nancy had deliberately kept part of her life a secret, not only from the public, but from the people who knew her best. The mystery of Elena, the man in the photo, and the reason for sending this message decades later became central to understanding what had happened to Nancy. This envelope marked the beginning of uncovering a story that stretched back more than 30 music years. A story that would reveal a double life long hidden from the people who thought they knew her completely. Nancy Guthrie's hidden life began in 1991, 2 years after her husband's death. During a rare solo trip to Santa Fe for a church retreat, she met Victor Ramirez, a widowed artist and gallery owner from Mexico City. Unlike the stability and routine she maintained in Tucson, Victor's world was vibrant, unpredictable, and creative. He was passionate, artistic, and free-spirited, everything her late husband had not been. Their connection grew quickly. Music, rooted in shared experiences of loss and a mutual appreciation for art. Nancy returned to Tucson, resuming her responsibilities as a mother. But she could not forget Victor or the life he represented. She began traveling to Santa Fe every few months, telling her children she was attending retreats or visiting family. In reality, she was building a second life alongside him, one where she could explore aspects of herself she had long suppressed. Victor gave her a new name, Elena, inspired by a character in a novel they both loved. Under this alias, Nancy became involved in his gallery, helping organize exhibitions and even displaying a few of her own paintings. She opened a small account in Santa Fe under the name Elena Ramirez and quietly contributed part of her bookkeeping income to support the gallery. In Tucson, she remained the devoted mother and grandmother everyone music trusted. In Santa Fe, Elenina was an entirely different person, adventurous, expressive, and free to live without the expectations of family or society. Music for Nancy, the double life, became both a refuge and a burden. She cherished the freedom she found in Elena's world, but she also felt the weight of secrecy and obligation to protect the image of stability her children depended on. These early years laid the foundation for a life that would span more than 3 decades, carefully divided between 2 cities, 2 identities, and 2 very different realities. As the 1990s progressed, NY's life as Elena Ramirez became more established. Each trip to Santa Fe was no longer just an occasional retreat. It became a fully realized parallel existence. She contributed to Victor Ramirez's gallery, managing finances, helping organize exhibitions, and even curating a few small shows. While her involvement was modest at first, it grew over time, and Elena became a respected figure in the local art community. Nancy carefully compartmentalized her 2 worlds. In Tucson, she remained the devoted mother, attending school events, managing household responsibilities, and maintaining her image as the reliable, steady presence her children depended on. Her friends and neighbors saw a woman who seemed music fully absorbed in family and community life. There was no hint of the other life she led. In Santa Fe, Elena was different. She explored creative pursuits she had long set aside, experimenting with painting styles, attending gallery openings, and participating in late-night conversations with artists. She lived more freely, letting parts of her personality surface that Nancy and Tucson had kept restrained. Elena was vibrant, spontaneous, and independent, the opposite of the measured, beautiful mother everyone believed she was. Financial arrangements were carefully managed to avoid raising suspicion. Nancy opened a bank account under the name Elena Ramirez. Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates. Just like this. Quietly transferring small amounts from her bookkeeping income to support the gallery. She also relied on cash and handwritten letters to communicate with Victor, avoiding digital trails. These measures ensured her dual life remained hidden. Over time, the parallel life was no longer a temporary escape. It became a second home. Weekends in Santa Fe offered a sense of freedom and passion that contrasted sharply with the structured, sometimes predictable life in Tucson. Despite the emotional satisfaction Elena brought, Nancy also felt the weight of secrecy. She knew that if her children ever discovered music, this hidden world, it would upend their perception of her entirely. For more than a decade, Nancy maintained this careful balance. Tucson and Santa Fe existed side by side. Two cities, two identities, two very different realities connected by her careful planning. She had become a master of compartmentalization, ensuring that neither world intruded upon the other. What started as an occasional escape had grown into a defining part of her life, an identity that was hers alone, yet one that she would continue to hide from the people who mattered most. By the early 2000s, maintaining